I'm not just saying this because I bet on Cardi B, but if she showed up at the halftime show and she was dancing in the background, that counts as performing, right? Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Nick DiMartino. That's Johnny Montalbano. This is another edition of Moving the Goalpost. You can follow us across social media at MTGPETB. You can follow Empty the Bench Network across social media at ETB Network. You can follow me on Twitter at Nick DiMart, Johnny at Montalbano NY. You can watch all Empty the Bench shows on YouTube.com/ETB Network, and you can listen to Moving the Goalpost wherever you get your podcasts. And make sure to like and subscribe. All right, so our post-Super Bowl edition. You were talking off air about the ratings. We don't know what the ratings are yet.
As we're doing this recording on Tuesday afternoon. So,
look, I didn't place a bet on it, so I don't really care what the ratings are. I always find that to be like, you see this in the NBA a lot, where you have some people on social media that are so heavily invested in the ratings. And it's super weird when fans, to me, when fans are invested in ratings, because it really just doesn't matter to us much at all. It matters to the people running the leagues, but I don't think it really matters to us. So when it comes to like leagues ratings going down, I don't really care a whole lot, because those are just sort of random things that fluctuate a little bit.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm just it's out of curiosity because
I
don't know about you, but it felt like, for whatever the reason, and there's a lot of reasons why it could be, but it felt like the hype for this Super Bowl was lower than in years past. And I think on a national level, the reason why was there was a lot of news to talk about leading into the game. You know, we were talking a lot about the Hall of Fame and the fact that, you had Belichick and Kraft not get in or not get voted in, or you did not, or also all the coaching that's been happening. Remember, we've had 10 teams that have changed head coaches, and all those positions have been filled. So there's been a lot of other news, and I don't know if I don't want to say it's Patriot fatigue, but just the matchup just didn't seem to excite a lot of people, which it was strange. And even in the day or two since the game, everybody was saying that this was a boring Super Bowl, and I didn't really come out of this thinking that this game was boring. I felt like the game last year was, because it was a blowout early and it was really one-sided. Now, I think when you look at this one, I think this game was a great defensive clinic, really, from both teams. I mean, for the most part, the Patriot defense did all right. I mean, they were limiting the Seahawks to field goals, but I think really at the end of the day, when we look at this was a true masterclass all the way around by the Seahawks, whether it was on the ground with Kenneth Walker, whether it was with special teams with Jason Myers, or with their defense. And that defense, was incredible. And I think also it comes to the point that we watched one of the most unbelievable stretches of football that we've seen from a football team, like in the Seahawks, how they played in this postseason, how they played second half of the year. This is a true and complete team, and I think that's really the takeaway from it.
I think the reason for the lack of buzz around the Super Bowl is, I think it's a similar dynamic to, and you're right, part of it is that there was a lot of news other than the Super Bowl, but I think it's a similar dynamic to what happened in the NBA Finals this year, which is that when you have new blood, I think, like in the championship, that tends to result in less buzz about that game. Even though people claim they love everything, like people claim they love Cinderellas and they hate seeing the same teams in it over and over again. The truth is, when you have new teams in it, when I say new teams, I don't mean new teams, because the Patriots and Seahawks we've seen a bunch of times, but new teams, like they have new head coaches. They're effectively completely different teams. They have different head coaches, different quarterbacks, completely different players. So because of that, I think that results in there being far less buzz about the Super Bowl. Like if the Bills had been in it, or the Chiefs, and say they had been playing a team from the NFC, like, I don't know, the Eagles or the Lions or the Rams, like these previous contenders that we've seen out of the NFC. If that had happened, there would have been much more buzz about the Super Bowl. That's why I think this Super Bowl was more for the real fans. That's kind of how I see it. It was more for the real fans. And the other reason I don't think there was that much buzz was because almost in a weird way, the way the Patriots got there, which was they got there with largely other teams' offenses being completely inept. And also, to their credit, their defense is making them inept. But the point is that the way the Patriots got there, people sort of viewed it as almost a consolation prize in a sense. Like these weren't viewed as two powerhouse teams in a way. I think it's very similar to what happened with the NBA Finals with like a new Thunder team and then the Pacers, which is not like a classic Pacer team with their classic superstars. That's really all I think it was. Like that's the reason why it seemed like there wasn't a lot of buzz. But look, I think that's a very in the moment thing. And if the worst thing you can say about the NFL is that this year's Super Bowl didn't have a whole lot of buzz, I think the NFL's in pretty good shape. Frankly, not the worst thing in the world. The NFL is going to be fine. That just happens sometimes. There's not much you can do about it.
Well, sure. And the Super Bowl really over the last several years has come to the point where if your team's not in it, it doesn't even feel like a game anymore. I mean, again, I think for the diehard fans like you and I, like it did feel like a game. Like I was at a Super Bowl party on Sunday with 30 to 40 of my friends, and it felt great because I met them all about a half hour, 45 minutes before the game started. We had a nice conversation and got caught up on stuff. And then when the game kicked off, we were all focused in. A lot of us were really focused into it. Now, I'll speak for some of them. Some of them have no idea what football is or the whole dynamic of it. Yeah. But there were others of us that were really like locked in. And I tell you, we were talking about this game. We were breaking it down from the opening kickoff to the end. Heck, I brought up the comment when the game kicked off that this Super Bowl felt very different in that you had a game that was a Super Bowl being played in daylight. Yeah, right? It wasn't on the East Coast. It wasn't inside of a dome or a retractable roof. You actually had daylight out there in the Super Bowl in a championship game, which actually felt and looked pretty cool.
Well, I mean, look, I prefer that over like I know football fans love to like glorify the elements and how football is always played in the elements. And okay, that's fine. I'm not saying every team should play in a dome, but I prefer games played not in elements. Like those games are so much more entertaining, and it's also a better measure of how those two teams would normally play. Like I remember last year the Rams traveled to Philly and they played through like 10 feet of snow. And it's like, I always want, maybe if they didn't play in the elements, the results would have been a little different. You know what I mean? Like it at least would have been a more fair matchup if they weren't playing in the elements. Like the Eagles are a team that don't even really pass the ball very much. The Rams are like a Big 12 team. They're very pass heavy. And it's like, and they play in California. Sometimes when I see games played in the elements, I'm like, I don't know if that's really totally fair. Like, well, I don't love it.
But I think that's part of it. I don't really know what you could possibly do. I mean, you could have even made the case that playing the game in California outside like that even in Santa Clara, that you could have been playing through rain. You could have had rain there. I mean, it rains in January there in California, so they could have definitely have done that. I think when you talk about the elements, I mean, I don't want to go back to this, but the way that the elements happened in the AFC Championship between the Patriots and the Broncos was so freaky because you were playing early second half with no snow.
Yeah.
Out of nowhere, it just absolutely came down and exploded to the point where the grounds crew was having a tough time just making the markers.
Yeah.
So I mean, it happened so quick, but I think the elements are kind of cool, and I think it's up to the teams to try to adjust to it. I mean, that it's just part of it. I mean, as short as the NFL season is, it also feels like it's kind of long too. I mean, I always say it's the old oxymoron, the long short season, because there are times where you're playing these games like, and we saw it down in Tampa Bay this year. You're playing football in 100-degree weather. I mean, that's not football weather either.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. Although in football, I think the reverse seems to be much more of a problem than playing in weather that's too hot. Typically.
Yeah, but I mean, you also see, players can cramp up and stuff in that too. So I mean, It's just part of it. I mean, that's what happens when you play outdoors. And really, it is the only sport that's like that because obviously basketball's indoors. Baseball will have a rain delay, obviously, and hockey is also indoors too. Although they've been playing outside in these outside stadiums, and they sometimes can get cold weather and a little bit of snow too. But I see what you're saying too. But that's why I think you're seeing more of these new stadiums that are being built having retractable roofs. And part of the reason is maybe they don't want the elements, but the other reason is so they can host future Super Bowls.
Right. No, I think it's smart for teams to build retractable roofs. Like, it's just smart from a business perspective. And also the likelihood, there's a very good chance that their future teams are not going to be built well to play in the snow, because fewer football teams now are built to play in 10 feet of snow than they're used to. So, it just makes a lot of sense. I mean, people were talking about this game and they were like, it's like watching an Iowa-Wisconsin game or some classic Big Ten West game, which is really what it looked like. Actually, I would say the way the game played out, for once, I was 100% right about how the game would play out. The game played out exactly how I thought it would play out. Like, exactly. Not just like almost exactly like the Seahawks and the under. The only thing I got wrong ultimately was that I think I under-exaggerated how much the Seahawks would dominate. Like, that's the only thing I kind of got wrong, is that I thought they'd cover the 4.5. I didn't think they'd win by this margin. But overall, I would say, the Patriots offense looked exactly like they did the entire playoffs. None of that at all is surprising. Everybody could have predicted that. And, you can play no offense and beat a backup quarterback in 10 feet of snow. Neither team's playing offense in that circumstance anyway. You can do that against the Chargers with no offensive line. And you can do that against the Texans when their quarterback is CJ Stroud, who has been horrible. And every time they've won playoff games, he hasn't done anything, or at least outside of his rookie season. So, in this, like, it's not surprising. In a weird way, it's really just not all that surprising that this happened.
Yeah, and the biggest mismatch in this that I had going into this game showed itself, and that was the Patriot offensive line going, especially that left side of the line, facing the Seattle defense. And that's really what had happened, and we saw that throughout the playoffs being an issue. And that's why Drake May was getting sacked a lot. That's why he wasn't able to do much. I mean, it was really his legs that were really the thing. And he had a nice long run as one of the bright spots. But really, that was the biggest problem in this for me when it came to the Patriots, was that offensive line. And really, the only chance I really thought the Patriots would have had was if they were able to get a turnover of Darnold and get a short field. Well, that really didn't happen because Darnold actually early on was not playing that great. His accuracy was off. But what really saved him was Kenneth Walker. And Kenneth Walker had some nice runs, got them in the field goal range, and then Jason Myers had one of the best games for a special teams player in the Super Bowl. And I was saying, and that's why as the week went further along, my gut told me that the MVP was going to be Kenneth Walker, and that's what ended up happening. And I know there could have been the discussion, well, why don't you give it to Myers? Well, first of all, there's never been a kicker that's won MVP of the Super Bowl, but it really was Kenneth Walker that, was able to get them in the field goal range. He was really their offense because Darnold was not really completing many passes. And then when he was completing them, it was to Kupp, it was to Barner. JSN was really a non-factor because he had been hurt. He was hurt in the game. So it really was Walker who's had an unbelievable postseason. If you remember, Walker started out as the number one running back there with the Seahawks. Had struggled midway through the season. Charbonnet came along, and he was getting equal touches, almost even got more touches. And then Walker from the playoffs, when the playoffs started, just took into a high gear. And the Seahawks did. They went with the hot hand with their team, and that's what ultimately helped too. Got them in field goal range, and then Myers did his job. Yeah.
Well, I know this because I had Kenneth Walker on one of my fantasy teams, so I remember the whole thing.
Yep, I have leagues.
Yeah, he he put the team on his back. I mean, he had 135 yards. He carried he had 135 rushing yards. I mean, it's hard for a running back to not win MVP when they have 135 rushing yards. And look, Darnold, they didn't win because Darnold was great. He was the better quarterback for sure than Drake May. Darnold didn't play a great game. He didn't do much. He also didn't have to. He also didn't do much against the 49ers. I mean, look.
But he didn't make any mistakes, though. That's the key.
He didn't make mistakes. You're right. He didn't make any mistakes, although there were some really risky throws in the first half of that game that really it could have gone different. But he didn't make mistakes, and that's what Darnold has been. Darnold has always been known for throwing the interception and turning the ball over. But a lot of times it's like, I think that's a little overstated and also not consistently applied. Like Matthew Stafford now, there's been a huge correction that he's like praised now and is viewed as like he's going to be a Hall of Famer and all of that. But like before, he was almost like Darnold before Darnold was. Like everybody kind of he didn't have a reputation for being a bust, but he had a reputation for like not being able to win in the playoffs and things like that. Sort of like a Tony Romo type of reputation, because he played on the Lions and then wins a Super Bowl with the Rams and his whole reputation changes. And it's like, well, maybe you got it wrong in the first place. Like that's how I see it. Similar with Darnold. Like maybe you got it wrong in the first place. The point is that Darnold's not the only guy who has thrown a lot of reckless interceptions. Most of the best quarterbacks are a little bit turnover prone, kind of like how the best power hitters in baseball strike out a lot. I think it's a similar type of dynamic. But the thing with Darnold this year is that he had a few Drake May type of games, playoff wins in a sense, where they didn't win because of him. But the Seahawks are such a well-balanced team that they're not a team like the Bills, for instance, that is or the Bucks that are very overly reliant on their quarterback. The Seahawks are a very well-balanced team, and if they don't need Darnold to do that much, he doesn't do that much. And that's kind of how they beat the 49ers. They didn't beat the 49ers because Darnold had an amazing game. He only threw for like 17 passes against the 49ers. And they destroyed them that way. And in this game, it's a similar type of thing. They didn't win because Darnold played a great game. He didn't play a great game. But the thing is that when you have a good team around you, the quarterback doesn't need to be the MVP every single game. And that's why a lot of great quarterbacks don't win Super Bowls. Like, people talk about Lamar Jackson being bad in the postseason, and they're correct. His numbers get substantially worse in the postseason. People talk about Josh Allen not being good in the postseason. That's bullshit. Josh Allen gets much better. His numbers actually get much better in the postseason. But the point is that both of those guys have to be MVPs for them to win games. Like the difference between Sam Darnold on the Seahawks and Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen is that Sam Darnold doesn't have to be MVP every game to win a Super Bowl. Whereas Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, they don't have to be good. They have to be great for them to win. And Darnold has a luxury that they don't have. There is no way Allen could complete 50% of his passes and win a playoff game. Darnold can do that. And to that, I say good for him, because he spent so much of his career on the Jets where he really had no chance.
Yeah, we call those system quarterbacks. That's what they really are. And it's something that's going to be documented a lot going forward here. And it's about fits. You know, it's almost like what we talk about in the NBA with chemistry and stuff like that. You know, the right system works for some of these QBs. And actually, really, when you look at it, we saw that with Daniel Jones when he went with the Colts. You know, strong offensive line, strong running game. That's what he had the one year he took the year that the Giants made the playoffs with him, was a good running game and a good offensive line. So it's not a knock on the QB, but some of those guys, if they're in the right systems, they can play, they can succeed.
Yeah. And also, I think some of it is also because, you know, people are talking about, because everybody gave up on Darnold. He was universally viewed as a bust and played himself out of being a bust and ended up winning a Super Bowl. That's unbelievable. We've never seen that before. And I think that it really is going to change how quarterbacks are viewed in the future, that like maybe if there's a little bit of a spark, people are going to be like, well, maybe if he was in the right system, it would look a little different. Or maybe if you give him a little time to mature, like it's not crazy to me that between the ages of 21 and 25, you can become a much better quarterback. I mean, we do it all the time. We have that attitude in basketball. If a point guard is drafted at 19, we don't expect him to be at his best at 19, but we expect that with quarterbacks being brought into dysfunctional situations. It doesn't make sense.
Well, if you think about also Darnold too. So when he went to the Panthers, and the Panthers were the worst team in the NFL when he ended up taking over as the starter for Baker Mayfield. And he took that team and made them relevant till the tail end of that season. Then he goes to the 49ers and he sits behind, I think we sat behind Purdy when he was there.
He did.
So he sat behind him for a year. I think he got into maybe one game, maybe at the very end when when 49ers had things wrapped up. But he did that and then went to the Vikings, where all the talk with the Vikings is how great Kevin O'Connell is with QBs. And so, that worked out. He got 14 wins there, got 14 wins this year with Seattle. I mean, look, Darnold had to do something right. I mean, only 2 QBs in NFL history have won 14 games in back-to-back years, and it's Darnold and Tom Brady. So
yeah,
something's had to run right. But yeah, his story, his career, definitely, you almost can make a 30 for 30 about him because of what he's had to go through. But yeah, it definitely is good. I think, especially with these younger QBs who are coming up, like, we're talking about a few that are going to come in through the draft, like a Mendoza and a Simpson this year in 2026 draft, and obviously quarterback heaven in 2027. There's going to be a lot of talk about them. Should they start right away? Should they sit behind? Are they in the right fit there? It'll be interesting because, Clint Kubiak, his OC now, officially joins the Raiders, and they're going to be drafting, obviously, Mendoza unless something crazy happens. But that's going to be all the talk. And, I don't want to get too far ahead when we say this, but that's one thing that teams, because they're already talking about, can the Seahawks repeat? Well, to me, they're already kind of behind the 8 ball a little bit because when you lose your OC, a lot of times, why do these teams repeat? It's because they keep their valuable role players and they keep the same coordinators. And unfortunately, right now, we're seeing coordinators leave as much as head coaches, and that's something to watch.
I mean, repeating is always very hard. I mean, it's the same thing. Like in every sport, it's hard. I mean, Ohio State, they were the favorites to win it all for most of the year. And, that didn't happen. Like, it's very, very difficult to win back-to-back years in any particular sport.
Yeah.
That's always the case. And by the way, the Seahawks this year were a wild card. Nobody really had them on their bingo card. Not many people were like, oh, yeah, the Seahawks are going to. You probably would have gotten good odds if you had bet on the Seahawks to win the Super Bowl in the before the season started.
Yeah, not in that division either, when actually you make the case, all 4 of those teams have talent. I mean, I know you can even say the Cardinals too, because the Cardinals have some players on that team. I mean, they have one of the best tight ends, I feel like, in McBride. So, I mean, they've got some guys there too. But you're right. I mean, that whole division will still be competitive. And yeah, with the 17-game season and the 2 extra teams making the playoffs, it makes it even tougher to get back to this land. But yeah, this is still, I mean, getting back to the game, I mean, it really was just a true masterclass by the Seahawks. I mean, You want to talk about, when we talk about teams, this is a team I'm going to look back and say, you know what, this was a complete effort, a complete effort across the board there by the Seahawks. I mean, it was their offense with Walker, it was their defense, whether it was the interception or getting to Drake May. I mean, May ended up getting sacked, I think, more than any other QB in the playoff in a single postseason run. I think he eclipsed Burrow back 4 or 5 years ago. And that was always my biggest fear with the Patriots in this matchup, was that offensive line, which had been getting worse and worse. And, there's only so much that May's legs can do. I mean, they had no running game. They couldn't get a running attack going. He couldn't get any receivers. I mean, Stephon Diggs, for the most part, was almost not even a non-factor until garbage time. So, I mean, that just really – I really took away from this thinking that this was a true, complete masterclass by the Seahawks. And honestly, I don't think this was a boring Super Bowl. I think this was just a great defensive masterclass. It was a game that I respected the heck out of the Seahawks for. That's what it was.
Yeah. I mean, look, Drake May –
because I think even the final score is a little bit misleading. I mean, heck, Walker almost ran another one in, and they almost could have had 36 points, and then the over
Thank
went.
God.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. I had the under 45 and a half. That would have gone over. And people are like, oh, like my dad was telling me, he's like, you're so lucky. We're so lucky that that there was a hold, But I'm just like, no, because Kenneth Walker wouldn't have scored if not for that hold. It was not like it was completely away from the play and affected nothing. It was right there. If not for that hold, Walker wouldn't have scored. So that's how I see it.
I had a friend actually at the party I was at Sunday who had a 9 and a 3 in his Super Bowl boxes. So he had a 9 with the Seahawks and a 3 with the Patriots, and he looked like he was getting ready to throw something. But the way that run looked, you knew there was going to be a hold. And by the way, also kudos to the officiating too, because you know what, they let him play. There were hardly any flags, any penalties in this game. So I mean, I thought the officiating, Sean Smith's crew did a remarkable job also in this one. So I mean,
by the way, it's rare that officiating is not like a story in the Super Bowl.
Exactly. That's why I think this was a true clean game all around. So I think that's why it's another reason why I thought this was a very, very good game.
But yeah, look, the point is Drake May was horrible in this game. And not only was he horrible, they were very overly, not only was Drake May horrible, but that's not really why they lost. They won games. Look, Drake May was worse against the Texans than he was in this game. I mean, look, CJ Stroud turned the ball over 4 times, couldn't complete a pass. He was so inaccurate that his own tight end got injured trying to catch one of his passes. And yet the Texans were still in that game. The Texans offense was so bad in that game that DeMeco Ryans punted past the 50-yard line, I think it was, because he knew with 2 minutes left, because there was a greater chance that they would score on defense than on offense. That's how bad the Texans were on offense against the Patriots. And Drake May, they were still in that game. That's how bad May was. May was terrible in this game, but the reason he was so terrible largely was because, or the reason it mattered, was that they were so reliant on him. If they weren't so reliant, like he did throw for almost 300 yards, but he also threw the ball 43 times. And from the way Drake May has played in the playoffs, if you're throwing the ball 43 times with Drake May, your chances of winning the game are very slim. Not only did he throw 43 times, he also led the team in rushing. So Ramondre Stevenson did nothing. Travion Henderson did nothing. And their offensive line, I mean, he was sacked 6 times. Darnold was only sacked once. So it was a combination of May missing wide open receivers and throwing 2 bad interceptions, but also their running game did nothing. Their offensive line did nothing to protect them. And, their Stephon Diggs was a total no-show in this game. I mean, the only receiver that he could kind of rely on was Matt Collins. He was the only one who kind of had a pretty decent game. So it was a combination of all those things. And frankly, none of it is really all that surprising, other than maybe their 2 best running backs really not doing anything. That's the only thing that surprised me a little bit.
By the way, how unusual it is for Drake May to be throwing that many times. There are only 2 games all season that May threw the ball threw over 40 passes in a game, and he lost. And one of his 2 losses during the regular season was one of those games that he actually threw more than 40 times.
Was it the one against the Raiders or the Bills?
Yeah, it was the Raiders week 1. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, the weird thing about the thing with this game is, even though they ended up making it to the
3 losses. I said 2. I meant 3.
Okay. Well, they lost to the Raiders, the Bills, and
Steelers.
The Steelers. Okay.
Yeah.
So, well, the weird thing with the Patriots this year is that I think in a weird way they were playing with house money. Like, it's sort of like they weren't supposed to be there. I think Patriot fans are like, seem to be somewhat okay with this, because they almost have it seems like they kind of have the attitude of like, well, we kind of weren't even supposed to be there anyway, and this is only Drake May's 2nd season. And I think that's true. But next year, I think there's a lot of pressure on them. There's a lot of pressure on the Patriots next year because, look, I don't call teams frauds. because I don't like the term fraud to describe teams because A, I think it's very overused. And it's just like repeating what everybody else is saying. And I think that's stupid. I want to say something original. But also, it's a dumb narrative about professional sports teams because we all kind of see what they are. They all play similar schedules. They all, like, in 17 games, we kind of see what they are. It's not like in college where some teams can ride high off a really easy schedule. So I'm not going to call them frauds. But let's be honest. The Patriots benefited from a very easy schedule this season. That's why they were able to win 14 games. Now, let me be clear. Most teams would not win 14 games with their schedule. The Jets would not win 7 games with their schedule, with the Patriots schedule. Most teams would not. I'm just saying that their resume and their standing was a bit inflated because their schedule was so easy, and it kind of caught up to them in the end. That's kind of how I see it. Ultimately, it doesn't matter because they made the Super Bowl. Whether you get there with an easy schedule or a tough schedule, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. But people are going to remember that next year. And if they have, and if, you know, if they have a worse record and they get eliminated in the playoffs earlier next year, that's going to be a referendum on this Patriots team, on Vrabel and on Drake May, because people are going to be like, well, last year was just a fluke. They were just a bunch of frauds. And I don't even know if that's totally fair, because if you win 14 games and make the Super Bowl and lose, chances are you're going to be a little worse in both those categories the next year. But that's what I think it's going to happen next year. It will likely be a referendum on the Patriots and people saying, well, they only made the Super Bowl last year because of their schedule.
Yeah, but you know what, though? I understand people saying that, but, you know, we've also had teams that have made the Super Bowl with 9, like, that haven't had the best record, but they get hot at the right time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's sure. Just, you know, you get dealt the hand that's in front of you, and at the end of the day, you still got to, you know, play well in those games. I mean, heck, they lost to the Raiders in week 1. A lot of this, when you look at them, I feel like next year is also going to be a timing thing. And I think that's like that with the NFL is when you play these teams. So like in the Patriots case, I mean, could they be playing teams that are better at a bad time? That certainly can be a reason why. Like, let's say if they played the Raiders in week 12 this year, they probably win that game and they would go to 14-2. I mean, but they still ended 13-3. They still did have some challenging games on their schedule. And I mean, not like, you know, murderer's row, but they still had some quality opponents on their schedule this year, and they took care of business. And then they got through the playoffs because mainly the defense played great. I know Drake May wasn't the best out there, but, you know, it was a whole team-wide thing, and that's part of what gets you. Sometimes it's not just the QB. And I think a lot of people are unfairly criticizing him when I know he didn't play well, but I think it wasn't even just that. I think it was more on the fact that the Seahawks were a complete team more than what happened with the Patriots. And yeah, it's tough to get back there. They probably will not win 13 games again next year, especially because they definitely do have a more quality of opponents. But I mean, 10 wins, getting back into the playoffs. I mean, for a second or what will be a third-year QB, that's still pretty impressive. I mean,
I totally agree. I totally agree.
I mean, think about it. How many times have we spoken on here about rookie quarterbacks struggling in their second year? Like, I mean, C.J. Stroud, let's be honest. C.J. Stroud had a great rookie year. He's regressed ever since. Jaden Daniels had a great rookie year, had a very tough second year. A lot of that was because he was hurt. But, I mean, still, he regressed. Caleb Williams looks like he's maybe, you know, he is taking steps forward, but we don't usually see that a lot. And I think, you know, I still think Vrabel's a very solid coach. But I think he really, at the end of the day, what they went up against was a very complete team.
Yeah. No, I totally agree.
And you know what? To be fair, I mean, the Patriot defense didn't play that bad. I mean, again, they limited the Seahawks, really the field goals for the most part, outside of the Barner touchdown, and then something at the very then the interception at the end there when the game was really out of reach already when it was. So,
well, yeah, no, and by the way, like the Seahawks offense for most of that game was really very limited. They weren't moving the ball well. They were able to run the ball fairly well. I mean, that they were just overly reliant on running the ball, but they couldn't rely on Darnold. He was terribly inaccurate. He didn't have a lot of time to throw. Like, yeah, I agree. Their defense looked really good, and that's the reason they made it to the Super Bowl was because of their defense, and that's a pretty important thing in football. It's just having a good defense. Can we talk about this? California's Jock Tax.
Yes.
This is insane. This is an insane story. I don't know how common of a thing this is, but apparently, so here's Boomer Esiason talking about the Jock Tax in California and how apparently it resulted in Darnold netting a loss of $70,000 to win the Super Bowl.
For winning the Super Bowl, the winning team, each player gets $178,000. In other words, the Super Bowl isn't a part of their salary. And because the game was played in California, and California has a jock tax, and they look at duty days, so each team spends 7 days in the state of California. So those are 7 duty days, and they pierce your regular salary at 3.5%. So he has to pay. When you take in account he got the $178,000 plus his overall salary, he has to pay the state of California for spending 7 days there $249,000.
That's just so stupid. I mean,
Yeah, but,
really
but
is.
it ends up costing him $71,000 to go play in California. Now, if I'm the NFLPA, now you got to remember, it's probably even more than that because since he's in Seattle, he's playing against San Francisco 49ers. So that's another day he's there. And he's playing against the LA Rams. That's another day he's there. So he's probably had like 9 or 10 duty days, or maybe even more than that in the state of California. So if I'm the NFLPA, I'm like, hey, we're not playing any more Super Bowls in California. We're just not doing it.
Well, I don't think that last part is true because they played the Rams and the Niners at home.
No, and on the road.
Oh, I see. He's talking about the regular season.
Regular season, yes.
Right. I don't know how much it affects the regular season, but I guess they get there a week, but I don't know how early they get there in the regular season. I suppose it's a week.
I think when it comes to the California games, I think they fly out on Saturday morning.
Okay, so it doesn't matter. It doesn't affect them as much.
So I think maybe they stay there maybe a little over 24 hours, unless it's a night game, of course. But then they'll fly back that night. So it's really maybe they're for like a 24-hour stretch, maybe a little bit more. But yeah.
I mean, I very much agree with what Boomer is saying on this. Now, it might not just be California. This is one of those really absurd sounding laws. I never heard of a jock tax. And there's all sorts of branding for taxes. I mean, hell, there's a death tax. There's a tax for like everything. I mean, there's a tax for everything in the world, which is so crazy. I've never heard of a jock tax before, but I have to Google what a jock tax is.
Well, you want to talk about something really funny? This thing, the jock tax, actually has a sports angle to it because of the history of it. So,
what is the history?
So, while jock taxes date back to the 1960s, states started aggressively taxing the income of non-resident athletes in 1991. When get ready for this. When California imposed the tax on the earnings of Chicago Bulls players who traveled to Los Angeles to play the Lakers in that year's NBA Finals, and then Illinois soon retaliated, imposing its own jock tax on out-of-state players.
Oh my God! It's almost like an in-country tariff, a little bit.
Could be. I mean, there's actually a lot of examples of this, and I think it's how many states? I believe they said it's 19 states and 8 municipalities that this jock tax is known for. And, California has the highest rate at 13.3%. Illinois has it. New York has it. I mean, obviously, the big states and cities like, Los Angeles, Chicago, New York City, it does make sense. I mean, it's kind of crazy. Boomer's right in what he was saying. up until the last part, saying that the NFL should not play Super Bowl in California because newsflash, Super Bowl 61, it's in California. But they're not going to do that. So then you'd be throwing a real fine line. We're not going to play Super Bowl in a state that has this jock tax. I mean, first off, these players get paid enough money that they could cover the jock tax easily. I mean, Darnold's getting a good salary, but I mean, look, it's a silly thing. I get it, but I mean, you're going to take the Super Bowl out of these states, and really, what you're doing like that is you're going to punish. You take it out and then punish the state, or the cities that could be making a ton of money from visitors and tourists and stuff like that.
I agree with Boomer on this. And here's why. First of all, it's the NFL.
Well, let me just clarify. I agree with the first. I mean, the first part's right, but to say that you're not going to play Super Bowl in California, that means you're going to narrow the Super Bowl down to almost next to nothing because you don't want to play it in a cold weather. I mean, what we've learned now is they don't want to play the Super Bowl in a cold weather city anymore unless it has a dome or a retractable roof, which again, which is what I said at the start of the show, why you're seeing a lot of these newer stadiums have that so they can host one. Or you don't. Now you're not going to have it in a state that has this jock tax. I mean, you're really going to be threading the needle.
That's a fair point. That's
my thought, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's a fair point that you're narrowing it down because teams don't want to play in cold weather unless it's in a dome, things like that. In terms of climate, California and Florida, and probably California is probably even better, is a better climate for football because the weather is much milder and it's a little dry. Like Florida tends to be much more wet than California. So California, climate-wise, is the best place to play these games. The reason I agree with Boomer and how that the NFLPA should say we're not playing games in California is because it's the NFLPA's job to represent its players. That's what the NFL, because the NFLPA, it's their job to represent players. It's not their job to represent the NFL or the league. They should represent the interests of players. And I don't care how much money you're making. It is completely absurd that going to the Super Bowl will cost these players money individually. That to me is crazy. And you were saying that they make a lot of money. That is 100% true. They can afford it. I'm sure Sam Darnold probably doesn't care that much. But not every player on these rosters makes quarterback money. Not all of, sure, Sam Darnold got his payday. But you know what? How about some special teams players? And maybe it's costing them money. I also think about them because they're not all football players are not all rich and their contracts aren't guaranteed. So they don't have much stability. I mean, playing in the NFL is a little less lucrative than some people think it is just because the star players get a lot of money, get paid a lot of money. So I also think about those players. But the point is that the NFLPA, they should be representing the interests of the players. And I also think that they have a lot of leverage. I think California would likely fold on this. I really do. Given that they have such an advantage having Super Bowls played in their state, I think the NFL in some ways is more powerful than the state of California in that sense. They hold a lot of leverage. I don't know how common it is to have a jock tax. I've never even heard of it until yesterday. I don't know how it is in New York or New Jersey or wherever, or New Jersey. I can imagine it's a similar thing. I don't think there's any other state in the country where a Super Bowl winning player would lose money due to a jock tax. I've never, I don't know if that would be a thing anywhere else. I could be wrong, but I don't know.
Yeah, ironically, I'm just reading through all this. Ironically, baseball was the only sports league that actually successfully was able to address this. But unfortunately, the problem's going to be with me talking about this is you almost have to make a political point in order for this to come across. And I guess the only way you can see this is if the NFL can go to the California politicians and try and hammer out something. That could be the only way that'd be the way to do it. And that's easier said than done.
Look, I don't so much care about the NFL as a business because they have insane amounts of money. I don't really care about that. But for players individually, I view that as a little different when it comes to players individually losing money. That I think is completely crazy. as opposed to the business losing money.
Yeah, and that's fair. And I mean, it's just wild because I mean, if this ends up being a major thing, I mean, again, Super Bowls next year is in. I mean, maybe could they hammer out something by next year's Super Bowl because this is going to happen again next year.
Mm.
So because the games at SoFi Stadium out there in LA. So I don't know. We'll see. And it is kind of nuts though, and especially if you think about it, like those guys, the NFC, which teams are going to be at a disadvantage of this is really the teams out there in the NFC West and the AFC West, especially because now in the NFC you have obviously the 49ers and the Rams, and in the AFC you've got the Chargers. So you've got 3 California football teams.
Yeah. Well, you hear Chargers hired Adam Gase?
Yes. Yeah.
As an assistant focusing on the pass game. Because that works so well with the Jets.
Well, but not a head coach, though. Maybe putting him in a different role.
That's fair. That's fair.
I mean, we saw that with Saleh. When Saleh went back being defensive coordinator, he excelled.
Yeah.
So, and it'd be interesting when he goes back to being a head coach again. Now they're the Titans. If he can continue that success, that's why I was a bit hesitant about that. But yeah,
I don't think Saleh was such a bad coach.
And maybe now that he's got more experience, that because he's been through it before. But I mean, he's walking into a mess there with Tennessee. But we'll see. But yeah, I mean, Gase going there. I mean, look, Chargers are a team that's always going to be in it. Health was a big reason that they didn't go as far as they maybe should have. But yeah, we'll see.
Well, not as they don't get hit. I feel like the team that gets the injury bug has gotten the injury bug the worst has been the Niners. And then the second worst was the Chargers.
Yes. And I felt like one team was actually able to navigate it more. But at the end of the day, I mean, the injuries did catch up with both teams.
All right, let's talk about this. Actually, let's do the Kalshi story because it has to do with the Super Bowl.
Yep.
Kalshi is under fire. A lot of fire, including from me, because I didn't even realize this until Nick brought it up with me off the air. So Kalshi is in a lot of trouble there's a front office sports article about it. So Cardi B, the front office sports article is Cardi B is a cautionary tale for prediction markets. Whether the rapper's appearance counts as a performance at the halftime show is causing controversy. So on Polymarket, there were $10 million placed on who will perform at the halftime show. And of the 10 million, more than 5 million was placed on Cardi B that, yes, she would perform on the halftime show I'm sorry. Although it's not clear how much of the total was traded. Okay, so $5 million was put on Cardi B, whether she's going to or not perform at the halftime show. The way both markets were resolved has frustrated some traders. As first reported by Dustin Gauker in his Event Horizon newsletter, at least one user filed a complaint with the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, the federal regulator charged with policing prediction markets, over the way Kalshi handled the situation. On Kalshi, it's important to read the fine print. Under Kalshi's rules, singing and dancing counted as a performance, but just dancing in the background did not. Although Cardi B appeared to be singing, it's possible she was simply mouthing the words. A person familiar with how Kalshi handled the market tells Front Office Sports. Because of the ambiguity, Kalshi settled the market at its last traded price, which it determined to be fair value. That means people who traded no on Cardi B performing took home 74 cents for each dollar, while those who traded yes got the other 26 cents. All funds were distributed all funds were distributed to users. The person says Kalshi keeps none of it. Okay. I'm not just saying this because I bet on Cardi B. But if she showed up at the halftime show and she was dancing in the background, that counts as performing, right?
Okay.
Technically, I mean, unless you say a lead act or make it more specific, yeah, that counts as performing. Obviously.
Okay, so I don't know if you know this, but one of the many things I do here is I am big in the live music scene down here in South Carolina. Now, look, I'm not going to compare live music in South Carolina with cover bands to these professional people, and that's not what the point is. But I have bands that I'm close with that I'm a part of that they have people that don't sing but just play an instrument.
Right.
I have people that do both. They have an instrument. I have people that just sing that are lead vocals. I have some that are lead instruments, some that don't sing, that don't have a microphone, and they just use an instrument. You mean to tell me that if you don't sing, you don't perform?
Right.
I have bands that are 5-6 people deep, and they all do different things. But if some of them don't sing, that's not performing.
If you
read the line again, what it said, what they clarified.
It says this: who will perform at the big game? It says who will perform. It doesn't say who will sing, who will be a headline, who will be a main act. It doesn't say that. It just says who will perform. And all the people, including the people whose names we don't know, all of them, all the background dancers, they all performed.
I mean, that is so absurd. I don't even know where to start. She was there. What? So they're saying because she lip sang? I hate to break it to you. A lot of people that perform at the Super Bowl lip sync. A lot of people that perform at, let's say, the New Year's shows, they lip sync. I mean, that's what they do for whatever the reason. But they're there. I mean, Green Day performed. That was a performance. What's the difference?
I don't know. I don't understand. If it says perform, by any standard definition, Cardi B performed at the Super Bowl.
Yeah, she showed up. She was there. She sang. She danced. Wait, what else does she need to do for it to be considered a performance?
Yeah, I don't know.
She wasn't the lead person. I get that, but
that's not what it says.
That's not what it exactly. It's not what it said.
I mean, that would almost be like saying that a special teams player that didn't touch the ball didn't play in the game. Like, if you're in the game while the clock is running, like if you're in the game, you played. It doesn't matter if you didn't touch the ball, you didn't play a big role. You still played.
I'll give you another thing. A person, how about a player that comes in for one snap?
Yeah, one snap.
It still counts.
If you come in for one snap, you have no effect on the play. It doesn't matter. You still played. So I don't understand why this is any different. Just because they showed her for a total of 2 seconds, it doesn't matter. She still performed.
By what Kalshi is saying, that means that half my bands that I go see don't perform then.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they have members that don't sing, that just play instruments, or just sing and don't. Yeah, that either just sing or just play instruments and don't do both.
Yeah,
that's what full cover bands are. Full cover bands have certain roles. I mean,
and I can guarantee you this. Cardi B and all those background dancers that were with her, they all probably rehearsed this a whole bunch of times. I'm sure they didn't just show up and start doing random dance moves. You know how background dancers are? They have to do the exact same thing at the exact same time. I am sure there was a ton of preparation that was put into this, and she was paid money to do it.
Now, I technically am considered to be part of these bands, but I don't perform. And I don't perform. I use this little behind the scenes secret here. I use this phone to help with photography and videography, but I don't perform. But I'm part of the band, but yes, correct, I do not perform. So that is technically not performing. But if you're up on that stage and you have any certain role, whether you're doing drums, whether you're on guitar or keyboard, or you're just using a microphone and you're the lead vocal person, that's performing.
Yeah, and there's nowhere, like when I made that bet, there was nowhere that it said that like she has to sit, like there was no sort of like conditions that said she has to sit. And here's the thing:
ultra fine print. By the way, my band's
pedantic. Which, by the way, I don't even really count that. It would be like, to me, it would almost be. Here would be my when it comes to just how law works with basic contract. Like there is such thing as implicit contracts. So, for instance, if you go to a restaurant and you order food, at some restaurants they might not advertise the actual price on the menu, because especially at like expensive places, if you order food, they said you owe us $1,000 for this food. They can't do that. Like, no judge would say, "Oh, you have to pay $1,000." Like, there's an implicit contract where it's like, all right, maybe it's $50 on the very high end to order this food. It's the same type of thing. You can't just put in fine print that nobody reads that completely changes the bet that you make at face value. You can't say perform and then put in fine print, well, performance doesn't mean performing. That's not legal. You can't do that.
By the way, so number one, I'm sure my people are gonna love me that I'm talking about them on this show. Number one. And number two, this seems like the kind of story that could go to the Supreme Court.
I mean, it legit could. I mean, it sounds so absurd, but it could go to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court would not rule on Kalshi's side because it's completely ridiculous. That's the problem with some of these unregulated prediction markets, is that like some of them could just do whatever they want. It's so absurd.
Yeah, and you know what? It's why I really I've never had any interest in being part of it. And I tell you, I don't know if it's because of the shows the past year or whatnot. But boy, my feeds get flooded with Kalshi and Polymarket ads. I guess Polymarket ads because I follow somebody, Taylor Mathis, who I think has something to do with Polymarket too, and maybe that's why. But I mean, yeah, it's unfortunately this is like the new thing. I mean, there's a lot of these now. I mean, there's these betting sites that are just through the roof. But yeah, I think they should be on the fire. This is absolutely absurd. I mean, I'm sorry. That's like I'm going to see a band. I'm going to hang out with my people Friday night. My season with the band really ramps up now. You're going to tell me that somebody who's there that's not singing or that maybe is just hitting a couple of notes is not performing? That's absurd. I'm sorry.
Yeah. All right. Can we talk about this? Mad Dog, and we're not happy with Kalshi, especially me. Mad Dog is not happy about load management in the NBA.
I could have gone on Chris Russo there on Kalshi, but I said there's only one Mad Dog. So
yeah. Here he is.
November before Thanksgiving in 2017, and I walked in there in the off season and did an hour show with the freaking high heat, sick as a freaking dog, and then walked in here and did a monologue, and I said I can't take it. I'm so sick, I gotta leave. And I took the train home. And 3 days later, I was in the freaking Stanford hospital, and the doctor said, how the hell did you survive this? And then I sat there on a Tuesday night, he sat there and operated on me for 3 hours to get an appendix out. A ruptured one. Chris Russo. And Jared Jackson can't play in the fourth quarter in a game in February, making $50 million a year. I mean, this is absurd.
Okay. There's two things about this clip that really reveal a lot about Mad Dog, which you already know. It reveals his age and his profession. Working in media, especially as an on-air person, from the era that he's from, not the era that we're from, but from his era, it was all like, you know, hey, we don't take sick days. You just go in. And on some level, it makes sense. I don't know why Jaren Jackson didn't play in the fourth quarter. But if you think about it, Mad Dog being the host of High Heat, being there, is a little bit more important than Jaren Jackson actually playing in a February game. Because if the host of a TV show isn't there, it kind of defeats the purpose of the TV show. You got to find a guest host or whatever. In basketball, in the fourth quarter, like, who really cares? Like, does it even really matter? Like, what?
Only Dog could have came
but
up.
Also, is he saying players should play with with ruptured appendixes? Like I don't know. Was that?
No, I think what he was saying was the amount of games that players are taking off, like second half of back-to-backs, and you know, it's not like Doggy would have taken, you know, the fifth day out of 5 off. And he was saying that how he was going through with the appendix and whatnot. No, I think with maybe just getting a little too doggy-like or dramatic or whatnot, or maybe even going off the rails a little bit, which is dog.
That's the style.
He was just basically talking about how load management is a huge issue, which it is in the NBA. I mean, it's something that's been discussed across this network for a while now, how players are just taking the second half of back-to-backs off. And it's a bad thing because, and we've spoken about this before, what if you're somebody who has to spend a lot of money to go to an NBA game, and you go, and we've seen the stories of how people travel near and far to want to see their favorite player play, and that player is not playing, not because he's hurt, but it's because of rest.
Yeah.
We don't see this, and we don't see this like in the NFL. We don't see this in the NFL. We don't see this we don't see it in the NFL. We don't see it in hockey. I mean, baseball. There's no such thing as load management, but they're playing a 162 game season. I mean, that's like catchers, but that's baseball. That's just the sport. I mean, you're not going to have a catcher play day game after night game if they play 10 straight. I mean, that's not load management. That's just, I mean, it can technically be load management, but it's really more just for the safety of the player. But we don't see this like we do in the NBA, and it's become a thing where it's happened to star players. It's why they tried this whole thing about it. Well, if you don't play in 65 games, I think it's 65 games, you don't qualify for the awards. Like we actually came out on Tuesday that LeBron is not going to be, I think, all NBA eligible because he is missing his 18th game of the season, which is breaking some crazy streak. So they were trying to do that to have these players play more. It's not doing anything.
Yeah.
I don't know what really you can do, because I don't think there's anything in the world that can be collectively bargained between the NBA and the NBAPA that would fix this.
I think there could be. Well, here's the thing. I understand both sides. I don't blame NBA teams or NBA players for doing load management. And for everybody saying back in, the 90s, they didn't, or back in my day, they didn't do load management. I mean, to me, that's just apples and oranges. Players are bigger, stronger, and faster, and they play a much faster pace of play than they used to. The injuries are just going to be more common when players are bigger, stronger, more athletic, and they're playing at a faster pace. Like, that's why there's load management now, because there's so much more wear and tear on their bodies. I mean, if you just look at like just getting bigger, more muscular, that alone increases your likelihood of getting injured in a lot of ways. So all of that has to be taken into account. And also just the average height of NBA players now is just taller guys get hurt more. And so there's a whole lot of factors for why there's load management. And just because they didn't do it in the 90s doesn't mean that everything should be done like it was in the 90s. Everything now is different. We didn't have internet in the 90s. So like everything is obviously different. So I'm kind of okay with load management on some level because of the wear and tear that basketball now has on these players. And that's what teams have to do. The flip side from the NBA, from the league's perspective, is people are paying money to go to these games, and they want to see the star players, because it's not even like in baseball. You go to a Met game and Lindor's not playing, doesn't really affect the game a ton, maybe a little, but not a ton. If you go to a Laker game and Luka and LeBron aren't playing, that's a totally different team. So I understand from the NBA's perspective, for people wanting to watch those games or going to those games, paying money for tickets, I understand that. There needs to be some type of middle ground, I think, some common ground between the interests of the players and the teams and of the league. And there probably is a way you can do that. Like maybe something like you're allowed to do load management, but you can't do load management for primetime games. Like if the Lakers and Celtics are playing like an 8:00 game on TNT, you can't do load management those games. Like something like that, like maybe something like that I would agree with. Like there's some type of compromise for load management, but I don't really have much of an issue with load management. They're not doing it because they're lazy. I think they're doing it because they're smart.
I'm not, and just to clarify, I don't have an issue with load management per se. I have an issue with the amount of load management there is. That's the, and I think that could also be what Doggy was saying here, because it is gotten worse. It seems like every year. When this first came out, it was maybe 3 to 5 times a year. It seems like now it's happening almost double digits. I mean, you have like Joel Embiid who won't play the second half of back-to-back games. I mean,
yeah, it's ridiculous. No, I agree with you.
That's really the biggest issue with load management is not that it's happening, it's the amount that it's happening.
Yeah, and it's probably, I mean, with Embiid, I understand that a little because he's always hurt, but you're right. Like there is a little bit much load management that we're to the point where we're doing it so much to the point where it's like, okay, you're really benefiting from this much rest. Like, I think that very well could be true. Like, that makes a lot of sense to me. But either way, even if you lowered the amount of load management, the issue would still exist. Like, I don't know if you remember this, but like Greg Popovich actually got fined. I think it was when David Stern was still the commissioner. I think it was for like resting Duncan or Manu Ginobili or whoever it was, or like resting some of his star players.
It was Kawhi.
Maybe it was Kawhi. Maybe I think this might have been before Kawhi, but it might have been Kawhi. I think it was the 2012.
I think he might have been the first guy that really started this whole thing.
I'll Google it. I think that was it. It may have been Kawhi when Kawhi was very young. Yeah, he was in November of 2012. He was fined for he sent Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, and Danny Green. He sent them home to rest instead of playing against Miami Heat in a nationally televised game.
National TV game.
And it was, I think it was a last minute thing. And here's the thing. I agree with you shouldn't be allowed to do that because this is a primetime game. You shouldn't be, it's also in November. Do you really need load management in November? Look, I think I'm fine with load management, but there has to be some rules for when you can actually use load management. There has to be some rules for it. And in a primetime game against Miami Heat, against LeBron was on Miami at the time. I mean, that's a huge game, Spurs and Miami. They ended up playing in the finals that year, actually. I'm sorry. The next year they ended up playing each other in the finals. They did. No, I think they did play that year in the finals, actually. And then the next year the Spurs beat them. The point is that was a huge primetime game. You shouldn't be allowed to do load management in those games. I think that would be totally fair because it's not even just the people paying tickets, paying extraordinary amounts of money for tickets. And I think it was a last minute thing, but also the television networks are picking up those games. So and for your only good player, for your only starter to play would be Kawhi Leonard. And this is against Miami. I think that's totally absurd.
Fair.
All right. That's our show this week. We didn't get a chance to talk about the NBA free agency. What are we going to say? James Harden, he ruins every team he ever goes to. Yeah, I know.
So far he hasn't. It's coming though.
But I guess we'll find out. I don't know. There's not much I could really say about that. Actually, not as bad as Westbrook. Westbrook is like the ultimate jinx. And
it's 1 and 1A. That's really it.
But I think Westbrook is actually a much worse jinx. I mean, LeBron has been able to make every single one of his teammates better and get them a big contract, except Westbrook. That says a lot about Westbrook.
I'll give you that. Yeah.
All right. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. That's our show this week. I'm Nick DiMartino. That's Johnny Montalbano. We'll be back next week to talk about, I don't know, because it's February.
For that. Good night, everybody.
See ya.